Hello everyone and welcome to Underwater Adventures with Alex Mirabal. Today we will have the second part of the episode of difficult shipwrecks to explore. So let's dive into it.
Hey everyone, if you want to watch the video in other languages, you simply click on settings, go to subtitles, select the subtitles in the original language, then go back to subtitles, activate the translate automatically, and scroll down and select your preferred language. In this case, we chose Spanish, obviously. Thank you so much all, and let's get on with the video.
As I mentioned in the first part of this episode, every wreck is challenging. Every wreck is difficult because otherwise they wouldn't have sunk in the first place. So yes, it seems like a little bit silly to say which are the difficult wrecks to explore. But there are some wrecks which have certain characteristics or certain conditions in the area that makes them a little bit more difficult. And these are the ones that I want to share with you. Let's start in Mozambique by the Nossa Senhora da Guia. Nossa Senhora da Guia was a ship that left Lisbon in the way to Goa, India, and it sank in the Moma Island in the coast of Mozambique. Moma is a part of a long line of islands. They are called Ilhas Primeiras, which is the first islands, because they were the first islands that the Portuguese navigators encountered in the way to the island of Mozambique. And this line of islands, it runs parallelly to the continental coast, sometimes in some places at a distance of about 8 miles, meaning that from the coast you will not see the island. So yes, they were quite big obstacle for the navigators to overcome then and now. Even nowadays, it's a difficult place to navigate, I tell you, because I have been around these islands for a long time and they have proven to be very difficult to navigate safely. So the Nossa Senhora da Guia sank, she's stranded in the south part of the Moma Island. You have to have in mind that these little islands, because they are very tiny islands, these little islands have a big coral reef around them, mainly to the south, making the shape like a fried egg, with the yolk in the north and the entire white part going to the south. This means sometimes as far as 2 miles away from the land. From the little island, from the island to the end of the reef, you sometimes have 2 miles distance. What this means, in Mozambique, with differences of tide, that in the spring tides they are up to 5 meters, this big part of the reef comes out of the water. I mean, it's exposed in the low tide, and in the high tide is totally invisible. So whoever is navigating those waters in the night, for instance, they will have a very dangerous feature in their way without being able to see it, because even in daytime, because they are covered by water, with almost 5 meters of water, so it looks blue, it looks okay, you can navigate, and you have a lot of coral under you that can damage your ship. So this ship, the Nossa Senhora da Guia, was stranded in the south part of the reef of Moma, about 2 miles away from the little island. I will show you photos because they are really impressive. These are these tiny island made mostly of sand and a big coral reef around. So it was a ship that it was, since the moment that they wrecked there are accounts of some of the survivors which report very hard and stressful rescue of the few that managed to get alive from the wreckage. So you can imagine how hard it was and how difficult the area is to access. There was even a team before our team that they tried to locate this wreck, and they were doing the same as we did later on, which was running the magnetometer in this area to try to locate some objects like anchors or cannons. And they baptized this place nearby the wreck as Adrenaline Point. that difficult it was for them. And every time that they go close to this place, they felt the adrenaline. So they call it the adrenaline point. Then later on, they gave me their logs, and we went there to the adrenaline point, and we could feel by ourselves why they call it that way. It was a very difficult place to go and work safely in order to find the shipwreck. But at the end, we found the shipwreck. We dove the first day in the shipwreck. We dove in high tide. So we managed to get into the water, into these search channels or gullies that go into the reef in about 10 meters depth. For my American friends would be like 30 feet. And in that moment, everything looked perfect. You know, these beautiful bronze cannons. I mentioned the bronze cannons in the previous episodes. You can check here in the bronze cannons episode, because there were 6 bronze cannons in the moment we found it, then they were disappearing, but you can see it in the episode. So it was a marvelous sight. You could swim clean waters, you could swim and see all parts of the wreck. But as the tide started going down, we didn't realize, and we were working, and suddenly the depth was less and less and less, till the point that in some cannons to the north of the wreck, it got dry. It's like we were suddenly like waves breaking over you, and said, well, half an hour it wasn't like this. I mean, in these shallow places, your dive can last 1.5 hours, 2 hours.
But that's so funny to me. I'm imagining you guys like diving and having quebra-cocos hitting you on the top and not realizing that half of your equipment is already out of the water.
Exactly. The first thing that comes to your mind is like, well, the weather is becoming bad, you know.
Yeah.
Waves are getting bigger. Or you don't realize that, no, it's that I have less water over me.
So the waves are actually hitting my head.
Exactly. So, okay, we realized that since the first day of expedition, and then we have to come up with a plan to excavate and to study this wreck properly, because it was a new scene to us. I mean, we have to combine, in a way, underwater archaeology with land archaeology, because part of the wreck was outside of the water, was in dry for a few hours a day.
I actually have a question about that. So what happens to the artifacts that are submerged and outside of the water occasionally or often enough, because it's not like they're always outside or always in water? So what happens to them?
Well, that's a good question, because you will have to consider that they are periodically out of the water.
Yeah.
They are, let's say, in the spring tides, they are every 6 hours or 6 hours and 20 minutes. They will be out of the water for a couple of hours or 3 hours. This means that they are in a much rich environment for oxygen.
Correct.
So they get oxidized more quick than the artifacts that are all the time under the water.
Yeah.
And with the sun and the temperature, these artifacts suffer a lot. So everything which is in this intertidal zone, zone that they will get dry sometimes and under the water the other time, they will be more damaged than the artifacts that will be always under the water. So with this in mind, we started creating a plan to try to explore this wreck the best way possible. And we couldn't just stick to the high tide conditions, because that would be, depending on the day and depending on the moon, that would be sometimes 3 mornings in a week. So you can...
I was just about to ask or to mention, because you mentioned like those ships back then or even now sailing in the night, the tides change every 6 hours, and those hours move with the moon as well. So you can have low tide in a night. So
of course,
you full on don't see that you're navigating to rocks. Well, not rocks, reef, but you know.
Well, of course, if tides wouldn't move, it would be very simple.
So just don't do it in the morning or don't do it at night.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
Don't navigate these places at 3 in the afternoon.
Yeah, exactly.
But, well, unfortunately, it's not like that. The tide is shifting with the days and with the moon. not only in the time of the day that you will get high or low tide, but also in the amplitude of that tide.
Yeah, the meters change
Exactly.
of how much it goes up and down.
How much goes up and how much it goes down. So for them, would have been a very challenging situation because they have big ships, they have a lot of draught, so they were very deep into the water. And nowadays as well, it's a problem. You have to take this into account if you are working in these geographical areas. So we have to come out with the plan to explore this wreck properly, part under the water and part out of the water. I have a story with that because when we found that out, when we realized that we have to do that, I planned an exploration myself on very low tides to walk all the reef, all the way to the wreck, to go and try to measure and map some objects like cannons and anchors that they were very difficult to do even in the high tide conditions, because we went very shallow to try to measure these artifacts and the waves are already breaking over you. So I said, okay, we wait for the low tide and then I go walking.
And you literally walk there.
Walking, yeah, I went walking. I mean, we put some photos of it. I went walking all the reef. This is going out from the island about 2 miles away from the sandy island to the objects, and try to do my measurements and my things and pass the metal detector around some of the objects that we couldn't reach when we were diving. And I was doing that pleasantly and that was super nice. But then I got confirmation that how important is the local knowledge. And you have to take it into account. Obviously, I take it into account because I learned the hard way.
Sure.
That the people who live there and the fishermen, they really know much better than you.
Yeah.
And I was in my archaeological task of measuring my cannons and taking photos of them and checking. I even found 2 beautiful copper medallions with the water in my ankles. Incredible. For me, that's totally new because I'm a diver.
Yeah, that must be such a brain breakage to realize, oh, little did I know I was going to do land archaeology and not just marine archaeology.
I'm working on a wreck. I'm working on a wreck with the water in my ankles.
That's crazy.
That was really really surprising to me. And I'm in the middle of my task and I saw, because I was walking, I mean, I was in shorts and a t-shirt and a cap, backpack with my metal detector and water and everything. And few of the fishermen that they were staying in the island, they stay there for 10 days. This is an island you cannot leave, but they make base there for 10 days and they catch fish, they salt the fish, and then they go back to land once in 10 days to take the capture. So these guys went out together with me to the reef to catch octopus and clams and, well, the things that they collect. And at some point, I'm measuring my cannons and taking photos, and I see them going back to the island, but quite fast, like walking quite fast.
With a little trot. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was like, yeah, what this guy's leaving already? I mean, it looks perfect. There is no problem. This clean water. And then I realized that the water was coming up to my knees. Yeah, okay, because it's colder.
Yeah.
When it comes in, it's colder. It's not this like soap.
Warm. Yeah, sure.
This soap that you are stepping on.
Soup.
Sorry. Okay. It's not this very warm water and you have your feet on and then you feel this fresh water coming into your feet. And I said, well, maybe it's a good time that I go back as well. And then they were going back, obviously much used to it. They were much faster than me. I was trying to go back as fast as I could. But anyway, the tide went up and I got caught with the water on my neck when it was still about 500 meters to get to the island. And this is not like a pleasant water of a swimming pool. This is water that comes with currents and they're pushing you around. So it was quite a task. Okay, everything that I have in my backpack was all wet, but okay, it was an underwater metal detector and a bottle of water. It was no big deal. I didn't have a phone on me. That was 2002. I didn't even own a mobile phone. So I ended up swimming to the island and very nervous because I thought I would not make it, because 500 meters is not that much, but when you are in the sea without the proper gear and with the backpack. It is a lot. It's quite far. So that is one of the challenging things on the Nossa Senhora da Guia that made the exploration of that wreck a different one, a one that you have to really come up with solutions. If you have half of the wreck out of the water and the other half inside the water, we recovered from the beautiful gold coins minted in Brazil. It's a very exciting wreck in terms of finds, but how to properly record what you are doing and get useful information for your research was a challenge. So that was the first wreck I wanted to share with you. The second wreck, also in Mozambique, which is very difficult to explore, is the San Jose. The San Jose, I will make a video on the San Jose. I don't have one yet, but the San Jose was a very important wreck we found from the fleet of 1622, going from Lisbon to Goa in India, and it was sunk in a battle with the combined English-Dutch fleet, the fleet of defense in 1622. The main problem with the San Jose is that the San Jose is in the middle of nowhere. As it was sunk in a battle, it was not the normal wreck you will find that struck a rock and stay there, and you can locate that rock today and you can therefore find the ship. No, the San Jose was sunk in the middle of nowhere because it was sunk due to a battle, so they were shot and they were sent down. The San Jose is about 20 meters deep, which in our Atlantic and Caribbean approach, we said 20 meters deep is great because you will not feel any movement from the waves down there. It will be pleasant, it will be nice, it will be quiet. Well, there goes Mozambique to give you a surprise again. We had in the San Jose huge waves, but huge waves coming from the south, sometimes big storms coming from the south, that they come rolling over the area. You are 20 meters deep and this wave will move you 4 meters in one direction and 4 meters back, and your excavation spot is in the middle. So you're going there and back and wait for the third wave to recede so you can grab again, and you can... The same feeling we got in the Lady Burgess or in the Princess Luisa in Cape Verde, but in shallow waters, we thought, okay, this is not to be considered because we are 20 meters deep. So being, so strong, this hydrodynamic power, the waves moving sand up and down for 400 years, most of the objects of this wreck were really buried into the sediment. So you have to excavate to get to the cultural layer, as we call it, the layer of the sub-seabed in which you find the cultural artifacts, part of the wreck. When you make a beautiful hole in your excavation and then it comes these big waves and fill it up again, as if you have never worked there, that is in a matter of 20 minutes. That makes it really challenging. We have to come up with ways of trying to stop the sediment from filling in the excavation spot you have already opened, or you're working there in 3 days with good weather and you see the entire area perfectly, and then it comes these big waves and cover it up again. Well, we went as far as taking these little water bottles, 500 milliliters water bottles that you use every day to drink the water. We put string on them, long string, fill them with air, and tie this string to any important object you have found. So if you happen to finish your day of diving, you go sleeping, and the next morning you want to dive and the waves have brought the sand back, then you will see all these bottles sticking out of the sand, floating, and said, okay, this is the anchor, and this is the cannon, and this is the rudder pintle.
Smart, because what you can be 1000% sure is that the artifacts that have been in the same spot for over 400 years will not move.
They will be there. They will be there. So, but you have to find a way to go back to them.
Sure, of course.
Find them again, not to do the same discovery every second day. So, and I'm mentioning this because there are different ways why a wreck could be especially difficult to explore, or to work, or to get useful information out of it. You have to be creative and to come up with solutions for problems that you didn't even know that exist. You will find these problems as you go. So San Jose in many ways was challenging. This is the one aspect that I want to share with you in this video, because it will give you an idea how even a wreck that is supposedly in the safe zone, which is about 20 meters or 60 feet for my American colleagues, it could still be exposed to the waves action. And that poses a new challenge in how to record scenes and how to make it time efficient, how to make it time efficient. Otherwise, you have to do the same work all the time. So that was the San Jose part of the story. Another challenging wreck, this time in Cape Verde, it was the Guadalupe IV, sunk in 1865. The Guadalupe IV is a unique between the ones that I have worked. It is a unique ship for various reasons. First, because it sunk in a very complex reef. It is in an area which is called Ilhéus do Rombo, which are these little islets in the north side of the island of Brava in Cape Verde. They are about also 8 miles from Brava. It's a very challenging place to dive. It's shallow, waves are really big, and we were taking there, Alain Urtebitz, my friend and dive supervisor in Cape Verde, from some local fishermen. They wanted to show us a wreck they have come across in those Ilhéus do Rombo. So we went there together in a small fisherman boat. This is about 4-meter wooden canoe, practically. There was Alain, me, and the 2 fishermen with a couple of bottles. And when we were sailing to that place where they wanted to show us a shipwreck, our boat started falling apart. I mean, the planks of the boat start getting loose and water coming in. And I was telling Alain, man, our job is to find shipwrecks, not to create new ones. But Alain is always that type of man and said, no, we'll keep on going. This is not a big deal. We'll keep on going. Well, so we kept on going. We were shown the wreck that they mentioned. We explored the wreck. We marked it. And in the way back to Brava, already to safety, one of the fishermen said, why don't we stop in these rocks? And because there are some badejos there. Badejo is a sort of grouper that in Cape Verde is really appreciated. So there are normally some badejos there. So let's go get some to have dinner tonight. So we went into the water to try to get some fish, and we stumbled across this wreck, the Guadalupe IV, that they didn't know, and we didn't know. We were not looking for it. So that was a very lucky discovery, but that is one of the reasons why the wreck is challenging or is difficult. It is for the sea conditions in that place. It's really rough. The second one is because this was a ship of emigrants. This was a ship that was going from La Coruña to Montevideo in Uruguay in South America, and the cargo of that ship was people, were emigrants. So it was people that they were moving from Spain to South America for a better life, for better options and chances. So when the ship ran aground there and smashed into pieces, there is a very detailed account of one survivor. His name is José Paler. He made a very heartbreaking description of what happened. He lost his wife and his kids in that accident, and the few that survived all the hardships they went through. So since the very beginning, when I started researching that wreck, it was very touching for you from the human point of view, because it's not a merchant ship. It's not a ship that is transporting a cargo of whatever, repetitive stuff, goods that belong to a company. No, this was a ship that was transporting people. So every time that you find any artifact in this wreck, I'm talking about coins, every gold coin, every silver coin that you found, this is the money of someone that was in its pocket with a lot of plans. You're finding dreams of people that were,
Sorry to interrupt. It must feel very different to find money and it be belonging to a crown or to this or to that, and then see money that belongs to people that are just trying to go for a better life. It must touch a very different string. Yeah.
Totally. For instance, when you find a cargo of coins, let's say they're sent from the crown to another country or from another country to the crown, they are repetitive coins. are the same coins and big quantities and big values. Here, every time that you find a group of coins somewhere, they are different denominations, like you would have in your pocket today,
Totally.
like 50 cents and 20 cents or €5. So this assemblage, you could see since the very first moment, yeah, man, this is someone's life.
Yeah.
And this was heartbreaking, as I said. It was very touching to me as a researcher, working in a ship that went down with a cargo of people. That, in some moments, made me feel a bit like a grave digger, as someone who was doing something ethically wrong. Because, well, thanks to our work, also a lot of information from this ship and their people on board came out, because you have to research and sense. But in any case, it was a ship that was challenging. It was difficult for me to explore, but for this different reason. It's not only the bad weather, but the nature of the remains and the artifacts that you're finding. That's the story of Guadalupe IV. I will make an entire episode on the Guadalupe IV, because it is a story that needs to be told, because there were many families. We are talking 1865. It's not that long ago. There are many families involved in this disaster, and I would like to put out whatever we found in that wreck. So let's wait for it. I will make a video on that one. The next wreck, which was quite challenging to work on, it was the São Tomé dos Burgaleses from 1547. Yeah, 1547. I got it this time. I've been making a mistake on that wreck always. 1547, the São Tomé dos Burgaleses, in the south side of the Caldeira Island, also within the Ilhas Primeiras, where Moma Island is, in the Nossa Senhora da Guia that I mentioned earlier in the video, and this one is the São Tomé dos Burgaleses. Here I have two reasons. Obviously, one reason is exactly the same that applies to the Nossa Senhora da Guia, is this difference of tide and the strength of the sea in that area. It was very difficult for us to work in the shipwreck because of these conditions, and differently to the Nossa Senhora da Guia, that some cannons and anchors were washed to the dry part of the reef. In this case, the São Tomé dos Burgaleses, it was the ballast pile of the ship, the stone ballast that was in the hold of the ship, that ended up in a place that in the spring low tides it will stick out of the water. That strong the conditions were in the moment that this ship ran aground, that the belly of the ship ended up in the dry. Okay, working that ship, we recovered there a very interesting cargo of copper ingots, a mine in Hungary that they were mined and processed by the Fugger company, the German company that still today is active, and we are talking about 1547, and they were sending this copper to India. They have these beautiful copper ingots with the mark of the Fugger family inscribed on them. It was a very interesting ship. But here we had an added challenging situation. Is that for a reason that I am a marine biologist, and there are plenty of things in the sea and the animals and their behavior which I still don't understand. And this one was one of them. We had during certain times of the year a big amount of humpback whales that they were around, mostly going north, outside of the islands, and you have them nearby your working. You see them every day quite nearby. It's a beautiful spectacle. You can see that it's a very nice view. But one day we were going early in the morning. The sea was flat, something very rare there because you always have these big waves. But sea was flat, and everyone in the Zodiac, because there is no way that we could put our expedition boat on top of the wreck. So we every day put the ship in one place and we go with the Zodiac to the wreck. And in the way to the wreck, there was this massive whale just chilling there in the surface, but really quiet. It was not moving. It was not dead. We knew it was not dead because she was moving and peeing and stuff. You could see it. And all my colleagues were like, yay, stop the boat. Let's go in the water and check on the whale. See it nearby.
Check her out.
Let's check her out. I am a marine biologist, but I'm more of the opinion that these big animals, you should leave them alone. You take photos, you admire them, you enjoy their company, but you don't go close to them because they are too big and they are wild. So there go all my friends. I stay in the Zodiac. They go all my friends swimming to the whale to, I don't know, see her closer. And then when they arrived, they realized that she had a calf. She had a little whale with her, and she was breastfeeding her, and then she got mad seeing all these guys swimming in her direction. Well, we didn't know.
Of course.
We didn't know. But we shouldn't have to find out anyway.
That is why you don't get too close to it, because it's literally the worst moment to go next to any animal.
And we are talking about a big whale. So I see all my colleagues speeding back to the Zodiac, but it was like speedboats. And then the whales start moving and going after them. They jump in the Zodiac, like, oh man, it has a calf. This is not good. This is not good. So everyone went into the Zodiac, and then the whale came under the Zodiac.
No.
Really, imagine the Zodiac floating here, and the whale came. I could hear the scratch on the belly of the Zodiac in the hull. The scratch of all these barnacles that she has on top. It's like... And I was holding, because I said, now she will flip us. I mean, now she will just go with the tail like this and we will fly away. Well, it didn't happen. She was not that mean. She just wanted to go to deeper waters with her calf and get away from these curious idiots that they were trying to disrupt what she was doing. But I'm telling this story because in that wreck, we got the presence of whales quite often. You could hear them as you work. Sometimes, I mean, we all know it's a nice noise, and your hearing is a little bit like music. It's all very nice. But when you have that during your 3 dives a day, 2 hours each time, it can get in your nerves. So this was something unusual for a shipwreck research, that you would have the presence of this big animal so close to you all the time. But I wanted to just share that with you because I think it's, on the other hand, it's fun. It's a kind of thing that you will encounter when you are in very far away places, and there's still wildlife going around and being present in the moment that you're working. So that was the story of the São Tomé dos Burgaleses. The last shipwreck that we will talk today is the San Miguel Almas. The San Miguel Almas from 1771 was a ship that was coming from India to the island of Mozambique, and they ran aground in the south side of a big bay which is called Fernão Veloso in the province of Nampula. And why this wreck was especially challenging is because the coral formation in that area, it has like a belt of coral which is very dry. It goes up to the surface of the sea, so it's breaking all the time. Then inside that little barrier there is white sand patch which is deep about 6 meters or 18 feet, and then it comes dry again. What happened that the entire wreck was inside that kind of bathtub or like a swimming pool, but you have to access that place to work. You have to go in and out of there to explore and to excavate and to do everything in the wreck. It was very close to deeper water, so our expedition ship would come quite close, but still was very challenging for the divers to go over that barrier to get into, let's say, calmer waters and try to work on the shipwreck and then go out. This is combined to very strong currents that in this area, they are either in the incoming or the outgoing tide. They will really push the boat, your expedition ship, sideways all the time. As we needed to put some power on the seabed, we were dredging this sand inside this trench. We were dredging this sand out. We have to put an underwater pump to suck the sand, the sediment, and deposit it somewhere else. And that pump is powered with electricity from the ship, from our generators. So we have to locate our expedition boat close enough to the reef, but still safe, close enough to the reef, and make the boat, tight the boat to the reef with different ropes so the ship stays in the same position. You cannot afford that when the tide change, your ship goes upside down, because then the cables are in the wrong place, so they will They will pull them and they will break them. So we put the ship in this position with 3 ropes, with 3 anchors in the reef, and then we sent an electric cable till the pump that was deposited in that sort of trench where the shipwreck was. And we were working happily there for quite some weeks till our friends the whales make appearance again. And this one was really funny because it was a big group of whales that was going out from the harbor, from the bay to the open sea, and they have to pass nearby. And we were there by the side of the reef watching them, and I just came out of my dive and I was on top of the expedition ship waiting for my next ship, and I see the whales coming, and I say, they will go outside of the ship. There is no reason that they will go from between the ship and the
reef.
And the reef. But there is always one in the group that sings differently. And she wanted to go between our expedition ship and the reef with all our ropes and electric cable and everything. And this was impressive to see. She was simply swimming. She wouldn't bother. She was swimming very slowly and chilling out. And my ropes of the ship were like, pack, 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 electric cable, puff, puff, everyone out. And she passed, I was 25 seconds. She passed, keep on swimming. And my boat was just suddenly...
somewhere else.
Yeah, it was drifting. The divers were in the wreck without knowing what happened, why the pump stopped.
Underwater,
no electricity anymore. What happened with the pump? So why do I bring this up? Because working on shipwrecks in areas where you can, with the currents, there was also in this place, there was a big storm that it got us one late afternoon, and we were about 8 miles from safe haven in the harbor of Nacala, which is nearby. This trip normally do in 1.5 hours, but we got such a strong storm that we spent the entire night, from 7 or 8 in the evening till 6 or 7 in the next morning to make it to the harbor. I was even thinking in one of the moments of this, because it destroyed everything in the ship. I remember oil bottles coming down and breaking, so you couldn't even walk inside the ship without damaging yourself or cutting your feet or everything. It was horrible. And I found myself thinking in the middle of the night, like about 2 or 3 in the morning, so what I'm doing here, man. I really need the 9-to-5 job. I need to get a job in an office where I can finish and go back home. So these sudden storms is something you get a lot in this area, and as they are sudden, you cannot plan for them, but you have to consider that they could happen.
Yeah, I was just about to ask, because that is a considerably different consumption of fuel, at least. Food is food, which is very important, but fuel, you needed to move the boat from side to side. So the difference from 1.5 hours to a day, to more than 24 hours is...
with your engine going on and on.
How do you account for that? You always have extra, or?
Yeah, normally every time that you go out in an expedition, you collect your fuel, but you stock up more.
Yeah.
For these kind of unexpected things.
Sure.
And these unexpected things in expeditions, I can tell you, they are almost expected.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
They will happen.
Yeah.
They will happen.
Yeah.
If not today, maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after, but they will happen. So yes, you always have a margin. But what happened with these disasters, with the storms? Things break. Equipment breaks.
Yeah.
Even if you have them in the boat and you have a properly storage, sometimes they break.
Yeah.
Water comes through places that it normally doesn't come in.
Yeah.
So things are wet, and delicate electronic equipment, for instance, it gets really damaged. So the impact of the storm, and when you have a proper weather report system that you see the real big storms like hurricanes or typhoons, that you see them coming, okay, you take your measurements and you go to a safe haven and shelter and you cope with them. But when there are these sudden storms, which are very local, they are very small in terms of geography, they are very small but very strong.
Yeah.
Man, that just gets you.
Yeah.
And then you have 3-4 months to recover from the damage that these storms in the fuel consumption, in the food that went off because it got wet or destroyed or washed away.
Or the generator got destroyed from the storm, and then nothing else electronic works. Yeah.
The bilge pumps. So this is another of the big hazards that you have when you're working offshore in shipwreck. That, as I said, as they are sudden storms, you can very barely predict them. But please take them into account if you are going into an expedition, that you stock up extra fuel and extra food and pack your scenes properly, because in the harbor or in the bay, everything looks marvelous and everything looks nice. When you're out there, things are a little bit different. Well, I hope you guys liked the video, and leave me in your comments if you've had any similar experience, what you think about these wrecks which are difficult to explore, and I will be reading the comments, trying to answer all your questions. And keep tuned and keep on diving.